Dear students, welcome to today's digital lesson. Daily we are using different types of goods and tools. Do we find any difference between present one when we compare to previous one? To know the differences between present production and previous production, let us watch this video. Children, observe very keenly the process of production between modern methods and the previous methods. So, observe a potter how he is preparing a pot. In the same manner, the modern industries are producing how the bowls are preparing in a modern industry. So, what are the reasons behind these two? So, do we find any difference between these two? Yeah, your guess is absolutely correct. The reason is the modern machines and more updated technology. What did you observe this in this video? Yeah, the reason is machines and technology. Today we shall discuss as a part of bridge course for the 10th class students to know the previous concepts to aware of the 9th standard concepts. So that is about industrial revolution and its consequences, colonization by the Europeans. After watching this video lesson, students, you are able to explain the meaning of industrialization, explain the importance of steam power and transportation in industrialization, give reasons for the colonization of Africa, and locate the Britain, Spain, Portugal, India, Cape of Good Hope on the given outline map of world. Industrial revolution, a rapid major change in an economy as in England in the late 18th century, marked by the general introduction of power driven machinery or by an important change in the prevailing types and methods of use of such machines. The economy and industries in Britain changed completely between the 1780s and 1850s. This phase is known as the First Industrial Revolution. The term Industrial Revolution was used by European scholars Georges Michelet in France and Friedrich Engels in Germany. It was used for the first time in English by the philosopher and economist Arnold Toynbee to describe the changes in the British industrial development between 1760 and 1820. This revolution had widespread effects in Britain. When industrial development started in Britain, new machinery and technologies was invented. Because of new machinery and technology, it was now possible to produce goods on large scale as compared to handcraft and handloom industries where production was small scale. British industries had now machinery and technology invented during industrial revolution. British industries had now started using steams, a new source of power for their production. Locate the Britain in the outline map of world because the industrial revolution started in Britain in 18th century. What enabled Britain to industrialize? Britain was the first country to experience modern industrialization because it had been politically stable since the 17th century. England, Wales and Scotland were unified under a monarchy. Britain was the first country to experience modern industrialization. So observe the Europe map and observe the Britain map, which is shaded in red in color. Politically stable since the 17th century. Many favorable conditions or prerequisites were present in England that helped in setting up and flourishing industries. Britain was blessed with modest climate which suited the cotton industry. There was no scarcity of water power. There was sufficient raw material available in England. Coal and iron were available in abundance and side by side. Observe the coal mines in England, coal and iron mines. Steam power. James Watt invented new steam engine, the steam engine capable of providing energy to power machines in factories. Transportation. Because of growing industrialization, there was increased need to transport raw materials and manufactured products. For this, the roads were improved and digging of canals was done in England. McAdam devised the method of making pakka and macadamized roads. Stephen's rocket. The first steam locomotive Stephen rocket was made in 1814. Railways was the new means of transportation that was available throughout the year. It was both cheap and fast, and it could carry passengers and goods. They combined two inventions. The iron track replaced the wooden track in 1760s and the power of the steam engine. The invention of railways took the process of industrialization to its second stage. The first railway line connected the cities of Stockton and Darlington in 1825, a distance of 9 miles that was completed in 2 hours at the speed of 5 miles per hour. The next railway line connected Liverpool and Manchester in 1830. Within 20 years, trains had started moving at the speed of 30 to 50 miles an hour. Changed lives. The Industrial Revolution brought many important changes in the way children and women worked. In the factories, they had to work for long hours without a break. They did the same kind of work under strict discipline and sharp forms of punishment. The women and children were forced to work to supplement men's meager wages. Colonization in Latin America, Asia and Africa. Around 600 years ago, people of the world travelled very little. They usually travelled on horses or camels or small boats and ships which only sailed along the sea coast. The contact between people and countries began to increase as traders travelled to different countries and continents to buy exotic goods and sell them at high prices. Silk and porcelain ware from China, cotton, textiles, steel and spices from India, fruits and scents from Arabia and wine from Europe were some of the most popular goods all over the world. Most of the trade routes that connected Europe and Asia around 1400 were controlled by Muslim kingdoms, especially the Ottoman Empire. The traders and governments of Western European countries like Holland, Spain, Portugal and England realized the importance of this trade. They also wanted to find faster and easier routes to countries like India and China. The Portuguese, for example, wanted to find a route around Africa to reach India. The Spanish wanted to know if it was possible to reach India by crossing the Atlantic Ocean. They invested large amounts of money by hiring experienced sea mariners, and they gave them ships and other resources to explore new sea routes. This led to the discovery of Central America by the Christopher Columbus in 1492 and sea route to India around Africa by Vasco da Gama in 1498. Columbus was working for the Spanish queen while Vasco da Gama was working for the Portuguese king. Soon English and Dutch governments also started sending their sailors to these regions. European colonies in America. Columbus landed on what are today known as West Indies, the islands of coast of South America. He had thought he had reached India and called the local people Indians. Once the killing and plunder had reduced, the European wanted to settle there and exploit the natural resources of America. However, they needed slave labor to do work. They realized that it was difficult to enslave the Native Americans. They, therefore, began to transport a large number of African slaves. These were people who had been captured from the interiors of Africa by Europeans, especially Portuguese traders, their agents. Repeat, especially Portuguese traders and their agents. These African slaves were transported to America under very inhuman conditions and sold to large landlords and others. About 15 to 20 million African slaves were forcibly taken away to America. They were made to work on sugarcane farms, corn fields, tobacco fields and cotton fields. Their produce was taken away and sold in different countries including England and France for huge profits. European colonialism in Asia. How slaves were treated inhumanly. Observe the children. Do we find the same situation right now? Is it in practice right now in your village or in town? European colonialism how the ships are being transporting on slaves to Africa, from Africa to America. See the children. European colonialism in Asia. Most countries of Asia like India, China and Japan were different from Latin American countries in many ways. Most of the Asian countries were densely populated by prosperous peasant communities. They were governed by powerful empires that had been vast armies. Thus, when the European powers tried to attack the Mughal Empire, they were repeatedly defeated by the Mughal armies. However, the Europeans were able to establish power over some important ports like Goa, from where they controlled the oceanic trade. The Portuguese, for example, established a seaborne empire over the Indian Ocean in 16th century. Why Europeans colonized Africa? Colonialism in Africa. See the map in 1880 and 1913. Observe both the maps of African continent. How the political map in 1880, similarly after capturing of different parts of Africa by the Europeans in 1913. Colonialism in Africa. Till the middle of the 19th century, the Europeans had little interest in establishing colonial power in Africa. Between the 16th and early 19th century, they used Africa for slaves. Slaves were taken from Africa and sold off in America. Some powerful countries like England used important parts of African coast like the Cape of Good Hope to halt and refresh supplies to their ships on their way to India and China. Explorations in Africa. Europeans had called Africa a dark continent as they had very little information about the interiors of the continent. The entire continent was on high plateau with very narrow coastal regions. Throughout the 19th century and especially after 1850, European countries sent expeditions to explore the interiors of Africa. The most famous European explorers were David Livingstone and H.M. Stanley, both of whom mapped vast areas of southern Africa and Central Africa for Belgium. In the 1850s and 1860s, Richard Burton, John Speke, James Grant located the great central lakes and source of the river Nile. By the end of the 19th century, Europeans had charted the Nile from its source, traced the courses of river Niger, Congo and Zambezi rivers. They now realized the vast resources of Africa. After 1850, industrialization increased in different countries of Europe like England, France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, etc. They desperately needed markets for their products in Africa. They now realized that Africa had many important industrial raw materials to offer like copper, tin, rubber, palm oil, cotton, tea, cocoa, etc. Africa was only the continent with large population and natural resources which was left for Europe to colonize. Look at the map of Africa in 1913 to see the extent of colonial possessions of the European powers in Africa. A virtual scramble for Africa began in 1870s. In 1870s, only about 10% of Africa was under colonial powers, but within next 40 years, almost the entire continent, which with the exception of Ethiopia and a couple of small states, was colonized. Ethiopia was able to defeat Italy in a war and thus become only the traditional non-European empire to defeat European army. South Africa. The English had established an outpost in Cape of Good Hope to help passing ships to rest and replenish food supplies. Some Dutch farmers had settled in this area to cultivate and sell the produce to passing ships. These were called as Boers. When the gold and diamond mines were discovered in these new areas, 1869 and 1886, a large number of people from Europe and Africa and India started migrating to South Africa. The British government now wanted to end the independence of Boers and establish British power over the mining regions. They fought two bitter wars known as Boer Wars. The British consolidated all the regions of South Africa into one union of South Africa. By this time, South Africa had a mixed population of European migrants, only English and Dutch, black Africans, Indians and Chinese. Repeat, the British developed a government system which favored the Europeans who were called whites, whose population is 20% in the total population, and gave them civic rights of voting, etc. This new system discriminated against the Africans who were known as blacks, whose population 75% in the total population, and Indians about 5% in the total population. Native Africans had to pay heavy taxes and had to live in very small demarcated area. They were not allowed to acquire land in any other areas which were reserved for whites. Thus, whites had about 90% of all lands. A number of discriminatory laws were passed to ensure that blacks and Indians worked for the British settlers in farms and mines. They were also denied civil rights of free movement and right to form associations to express their complaints. This policy of discriminating against the majority of the population based on racial differences is called apartheid policy. The African people fought against it for almost in the 20th century and finally ended it in 1994. The European powers thus changed the economic and social lives of the people of the colonies in such a way as to suit the needs of European powers. However, at the same time, they could not stop the new ideas of freedom and democracy and nationalism from reaching the colonies. These ideas gave the people of colonies a new power and identity with which to fight colonialism and eventually win freedom. Evaluation. Now let us see some evaluation questions from the video lesson. Explain the meaning of industrialization. Give reasons for colonization in Africa. Locate the Britain, Spain, Portugal, India, Cape of Good Hope on the given outline map of world. Children, so this concept is completely, it is helpful to understand the 10th standard lessons. If you read the 9th standard syllabus from chapter 13th and 14th lesson, so definitely you will get an idea to understand the 10th standard syllabus. Thank you.
కింది వాటిలో భారతదేశంలోని మొదటి జాతీయ ఉద్యానవనం ఏది? ఆప్షన్ ఏ బందిపూర్, ఆప్షన్ బి కార్బెట్, ఆప్షన్ సి పెరియార్, ఆప్షన్ డి కియోలాడియో. Your time starts now. Answer is option B, కార్బెట్. జిమ్ కార్బెట్ నేషనల్ పార్క్, దీనిని గతంలో హేలీ నేషనల్ పార్క్ అని పిలిచేవారు. ఇది భారతదేశంలోనే పురాతన జాతీయ ఉద్యానవనం. అంతరించిపోతున్న బెంగాల్ పులిని రక్షించేందుకు 1936లో దీనిని ఏర్పాటు చేశారు. ఇది ఏప్రిల్ 1973లో ప్రారంభించబడిన ప్రాజెక్ట్ టైగర్ కన్జర్వేషన్ ప్రోగ్రాం కిందకు వచ్చిన వాటిలో మొదటిది. భారతదేశపు మొట్టమొదటి డ్రైవర్లెస్ మెట్రో కార్లను ఏ కంపెనీ తయారు చేసింది? ఆప్షన్ ఏ HAL, ఆప్షన్ బి BAML,
ఆప్షన్ సి DRDO,
ఆప్షన్ డి ఆల్స్ట్రోమ్. Your time starts now.